What is that? What is that? What is it? Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah! Open my eyes! Eyes! Ah!
We interrupt this program to bring you
Nick Whoa, Cage!
All right, everybody. My name is Kevin.
And I'm John.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys. And welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. And it's March, so you know what that means. Real Cage Match. Real Cage Match is a special review series where your Real Movie Guys review 12 movies from the legendary actor Nicolas Cage and have them go one-on-one in a tournament-style battle to determine which one truly is the cagiest of them all. On today's episode, we're taking a look at The Wicker Man. A sheriff investigates the disappearance of a young girl from a small island and discovers there's a larger mystery to solve among the island's secretive neo-pagan community. Wow. The Wicker Man. This movie is, in Nicolas Cage's catalog, it's probably one of the most Cagiest films, I would say. And Cagiest in the good or bad is depending on how you take it. But I think most people universally believe this movie's terrible. The Wicker Man is notoriously one of the worst horror remake imagining movies ever put to film. And I tend to agree with this. And even with Nicolas Cage, we're going to have a conversation here, but I wonder if it is so bad it's good, because I kind of want to see where you guys lean, because The Wicker Man does have some things that do give it a lot of charm, not in the necessarily good way that we've come to expect from some movies, but we're going to talk about it. So before we jump into it, Adam, what did you think? Is this your first time seeing The Wicker Man?
Yes, the full-length film. This was my first time, but I've seen so many different scenes.
It's legendary, right?
Yeah, it's like you shouldn't know or not know what this movie is by this point. But it was a movie. It was definitely a movie.
Right.
It was good. I guess it was enjoyable. It was certain parts were definitely stand out more than others.
Right.
Overall, though, I don't know. Maybe this really is his Cagiest movie.
It really is. I mean, it could really very well be up there. I think it's just so batshit insane. And it's tough to say if it's for good or bad reasons, though. I think that would maybe be the discussion we're going to have about it. But all right. So you enjoyed yourself, honestly, a little bit through it.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay. All right. John, what's going on? What'd you think of The Wicker Man?
It was just weird. It was a strange movie. It was one of those movies that after you watch it, you're just kind of like, what the fuck did I just watch?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty, adept observation for this movie. It definitely has a lot of that what the fuck moments, and you're not sure what you're watching, or even if you're really enjoying it at times, I would say, with The Wicker Man. But yeah, okay. So would you say you enjoyed your time? Not really, or?
I would say I'm like in the middle, I guess. Like, I didn't necessarily hate it, but it wasn't like one of the ones that, like, I'd probably go watch again.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So, okay. Julie, I know you said you saw this in theaters when we talked about it at one point, so I don't know what that says about you, but okay.
I did. Well, I want to say middle school, maybe early high school. So it's that thing when you're that age and a horror movie's coming out, like, you have to go see it.
Yeah, this was like PG-13 probably, right?
Right. Yeah. So I saw this in theaters with a friend of mine. And I remember us like doing that just the whole time. I vaguely, I really only remember the climax. That final maybe 30 minutes of the movie is what I actually remembered going forward. And I remember the end credit scene, which when we watched it together, I'm like, you're missing the scene. James Franco's in it. I know about this scene. But the movie definitely is like that razor's edge of just bad or so bad it's good, because like Johnny said, like, I didn't hate my time watching. It's almost like a car accident. You have to just watch it happen.
An on fire burning car accident.
Yes, you want to watch it and see, like, how is this whole thing going to shake out, because I literally can't take my eyes off it.
And that's what this movie really is. It is a car wreck in the most glorious degree possible. But I do have to tell you, for a movie that's so bad it's good, there's something I always try to look for, and it's, if I'm when it's so bad it's good, it has to be something I'm able to sit through. And I actually found myself having a hard time sitting through The Wicker Man. Like, once you get to the end of the movie where everything kind of goes batshit insane, and, you know, that's when the bees and all, like, we all know that those parts of this movie. But until you get to that part, I kind of had a hard time sitting through it. Did anybody else kind of have, like, a little bit of a hard time at least? Because I felt like it was just really boring.
Yeah, I thought it was like slow pacing for this. Like another movie that just the pacing seemed off. It was just not one of those movies that you're watching and you're just going, okay, I understand, like it's 30 minutes in. This movie's like, oh, it's 30 minutes in only, you know?
Right, and it shouldn't have been that slow. Did you get that kind of vibe, Adam, when you watched it, or were you more enthralled with the mystery?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue that the movie has is like a lot of these scenes just don't make sense. They leave me asking like a lot of questions like, why did that happen? What is going on here? And then they just aren't addressed anymore in the film, like at all.
Right. But what would be one example if you could give one, like, because I know there's a lot that we could talk about. I think go ahead, you give one and I'll talk about one.
I was going to say about the self-help book that he talks about, or that he goes to grab in the beginning. Like, what the hell was that for?
Why is that a thing?
And then it goes missing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it never addressed why.
Okay.
Even like the car accident, then we got like the whole like crux of this, like the relationship for the movie, like to have a daughter, which, oh my god, this plot. But yeah, the beginning of the movie, a little girl and her mom are pulled over at the side of the road, and the girl throws her doll out the window. He goes to get it, and suddenly, boom, it gets destroyed by a truck, and he's like scarred for life by it. Why is that like? What is that supposed to mean? Like, I don't understand.
And they kept doing like little Easter eggs, which like you brought it up, but I'm still not, because he keeps having visions of it throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And at one point in one of his visions, his coworker, which is like a female cop, she comes to visit him, and then it shows like she's got in the vision, she's got like bees on her, and Kevin's like, oh, like she was probably part of the plan.
Well, her name was she had I'll give him that one because she had the.
Yeah, but was she?
Apparently, they were very extensive.
On the island to make it really fully connected.
This is one of those.
They just have a scout on the mainland.
This movie wants you to think it's like really smart, but by doing so, it's actually really fucking stupid. And that's kind of where this movie kind of comes across, where they're like, we set all these pieces in motion for years to come, and maybe that's like to the biggest detriment to this movie, because by doing all these crazy things like that, by having like the cop who was a plant there for years to get him to go to the island along with some girl he met. They had a relationship, had a daughter, and she ran away. And then they had to wait. How old was the girl? Like 6 years old or something like that? 5 or 6. She had to wait 5 or 6 years to get this one guy to come to this one island to have a sacrifice for this one ritual. What? Like, even by like cult standards, that makes absolutely no sense to this whole movie. And they kind of know that, and I think that's why like this movie like falls apart a lot at times, because they don't even know how to answer the questions that they kind of propose. And I think one of the other bigger issues is because they've changed the story so much, which we'll talk a little bit about the original, by changing all these things to try to make it, I don't know if it's trying to make it more edgy. Maybe that's what it's trying to go for. It just makes the even more stupid, because the original idea and premise behind this movie is actually really good. And the original one is such a huge classic, and that was made 1978 or something like that. That's still one of the better like horror movies and tellings of the story. But this movie, by trying to add like these cult changes and, you know, have it like be all women because it's edgier, and like when you go to this island, you already know something bad's happening. Like, at least there's no mystery in this movie. You know something bad's going on, and it just feels incredibly stupid. But before we even talk some about that stuff, let's talk about Nicolas Cage. Right, we've seen a lot of Nicolas Cage this month. We've seen some really good, some really bad. Adam, what happened with this performance? I'm at a loss at times.
Very eccentric. It just seems like he's all over the place. Like he really took this role and just ran with it. Like, right. I want to know how they approached him, or even he approached them, being like, this is the way I want to do it. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's a great idea. You know, just go crazy.
Right. Like, no one told him no at any point. Like, just start screaming. Because a lot of the movie is just him yelling, and, like, going crazy throughout the whole movie. The funny part is, based on, like, some of the minimal research that I did for this movie, we found out that actually this was supposed to be a tribute to, I guess, a late friend. He was friends with Johnny Ramone at some point, and Johnny Ramone got him interested in The Wicker Man. And when he got him interested in the Wicker Man, he said, I always wanted to make a remake of that movie, always wanted to do it. So Nicolas Cage, as soon as the option came up, he signed up and jumped onto it. And over the years, Nicolas Cage has said, he was always behind this movie. It was a good movie. Then suddenly, like years down the line, he said, oh, it was supposed to be terrible. I don't buy that. Does anyone else kind of buy that excuse that this was supposed to be a bad movie?
No.
Because
they put too much effort into like other things where I'm like, I forget, we were watching something about it, like a background, and if you look at like the architecture of all the buildings and all the sets, it's all in that like honeycomb shape. So I'm like, you wouldn't intentionally make a bad movie and put all that effort into like minute details like that. I think they genuinely did, like you said, they think that they're so smart.
Right.
Oh, the symbolism, look at these connections and the visions. And then it flopped. And then, it's like with Tommy Wiseau in The Room.
Right. It's very similar.
Oh yeah, I always meant to make it a comedy, which like that was not the intention, So I think it's, you're making a lemonade out of lemons kind of situation.
Right. And I think it's tough because there are some things that are interesting in this movie, and it does have some like conceptually interesting ideas, but it's just really tough for me to get through. And it's really hard to recommend beyond, again, the second half of the movie where it decides to say, fuck it, and just goes crazy throughout the whole entire movie. And that was probably the best part. Adam, what was your favorite part of like this movie? If you had to pick like one of your favorite scenes or like something that they executed well in this movie.
They executed well.
Yeah, it's hard, right? I know. I put a big task on you.
I mean, I can tell you my most enjoyable part.
Oh, most enjoyable part. Oh boy, go for it.
I mean, that was when he donned the bear suit. I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, which we'll talk about the bear suit. We'll save that one though, because that is an interesting one to talk about. Okay. It's tough, going into this movie, I kind of really wanted to enjoy it. And again, people at home, don't say I never do anything for you. I spent $35 on this movie on Blu-ray because it's out of print. Yeah, Julie's really upset about that still. Because I wanted to watch it. I want to make sure I had the best viewing experience for The Wicker Man. Give it its best shot. It's an expensive-ass movie, just so you know. And maybe there is a reason it's out of print because no one ever wants you to watch it again because it's so bad. Yeah, Nick Cage, though, circling back a little bit to that, off that tangent, he just really, I guess he's trying to play, I feel like he tried to go for like a Twin Peaks kind of style of like investigator where he's really angry all the time and he just keeps constantly yelling to try and get information out of it. And I don't know if they think that adds urgency to the plot by having him scream all the time, but it really doesn't add urgency. It just kind of makes it annoying and comical. One of the other better scenes, too, is like when he goes into the school with the little girls and he's like constantly yelling at them like, phallic symbol, phallic symbol. You can't help but laugh because this movie, if you look at it as a comedy, it kind of is successful to some extent. But if you take it as a serious film, I think it really is like a colossal failure at all times. And I don't know. I don't know if they didn't know what they wanted to do. I think there's definitely an identity crisis for this movie because they didn't want to do the original, but they wanted to do something new, but they didn't know how to do it. So again, we saw this a lot, I think, in the 2000s and kind of still now where we try to remake movies, add these changes to them, but we still can't let go of the original, so that kind of burdens it. Does anyone think if they had done something a little different or maybe they stuck closer to the original, this could have been better? Do you think there's any way that this might have been successful? Because there is a movie that did kind of do this, if anyone's familiar with it. Midsummer was a more recent movie. And essentially it was heavily inspired by The Wicker Man and kind of did the same thing this movie did, but did it well and actually made sense to the whole story. Do you think there was hope for this at any point? Or was Nick Cage not it?
There's definitely I will say there's intriguing elements when you really look at like the community as a whole. And, I do like the bee symbolism. Like, I thought that was cool. Nick Cage brings his own cagey element to this movie. But even the other performances, none of them were good. So you have that, like nobody's really delivering a good performance. And the plot, there's just so many holes in it and nothing really, and just too many things in the air that it's juggling. And it needed to put a couple things aside and really just focus in on a couple of their stronger elements.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the problem. Do you agree with that too, Adam? It's just there's too much wrong. There's like just so much wrong with this movie on a
Yeah,
fundamental level.
yeah, right. I think the fact that it is struggling with its identity really affects this movie. Because I mean, looking up things about the original, it just seems like that has so many more core horror elements in it, and it's not even like, I guess the usual horror movie that we're, so used to.
Right. And I hate to do comparisons because I feel like something has to be able to stand on its own. We've kind of run across that for those who've watched our Last of Us series. We've been kind of doing that with the video game and the TV show comparisonly. But when you watch The Wicker Man and you compare it to the 1978 version, the 1978 version it's a really good movie made on a very low budget at a time when there wasn't something this, maybe by today's standards, isn't as, scandalous. But back then it was, when you were comparing like the ongoing conflict of religion and dealing with that kind of situation, even though they have ultimately the same ending in both movies, which I promise we're going to talk about some of the crazy stuff in this movie. But that movie just executes it so well. It's a slow burn. It kind of builds up to the end. This movie it wants to be this crazy thriller movie, but it just feels so incompetently made. I think maybe that's the best way to put it. It's just very incompetent. There's things that are clearly missing. One scene I always joke about, I don't know if you guys remember this, it's like towards the end of the movie, Nick Cage is like running from the people, and he stops in like the middle of like an area, and he turns his head, and when he looks behind him, there's nothing there. Like, it looks like there's like a hole or like a grassy area, and there's like was there supposed to be something there? Like, it's like this big shot where they focus in on it, and it makes no sense whatsoever. And that's kind of how I feel about this movie. It just makes no sense whatsoever. But before we talk about our scores and stuff like that for this movie, I think it's time we give our award for the real Cagiest moment. The real Cagiest moment is a special award we award to the Cagiest moment of the film. Adam, I know you're chomping at the bit. What was the real Cagiest moment for you?
All right, it's when he dons the bear suit, man.
What is it? What's wrong, sister?
It was so entertaining just to see him out of, honestly, it just seemed like it was out of nowhere. And to go around punching people in a bear suit, like, that's fantastic.
And I don't know, it's even funnier because it's like these women he's just hitting out of. I mean, I'm not even trying to make like a joke about that, but he's punching women, and it's like fucking Nicolas Cage hitting women. Like, he punches the one girl in the bar out of nowhere and like beats up the other girl and throws her into like a bunch of the pictures of the girls that were used to celebrate. Like, what is this movie? Like, it's like he's beating up women, Nicolas Cage. So terrible. The bear suit's iconic, though. It is an iconic scene. Just seeing Nick Cage in a bear suit run up and punch someone in the face is fantastic.
I mean, just that whole sequence of him going like crazy at the end there. Just like
Running
he's just
the woods.
over it. Yeah.
I know. It's phenomenal. John, how about you? Did you have any other like scenes that you really liked in this movie that you thought were, let's say, cagiest? Because there's a lot of cagey scenes in this movie.
I feel like that was the most cagiest one, but also like what you guys were talking about with like the bees and stuff. I thought that was kind of Nick Cage at one of his cagiest moments.
Yeah, and you felt like they were maybe trying to do something clever with the whole bee thing because he's allergic to bees, and I thought this was really interesting. So I read somewhere, and I don't know what it came up with. It was like one of these logic issues we have with the movie. If he's allergic to bees and he he sleeps with the one girl to have a daughter, isn't there a chance she could have inherited some kind of similar bee? Yeah.
Right. Well, the whole logic is he was specifically chosen. You know what I mean?
Why
So,
would they choose someone who's
right.
allergic to bees when bees are like
Yeah.
one of their main cash cow? Isn't that like a terrible idea? Like, in hindsight, like, why would you pick someone allergic to the thing you're trying to save? I'm just saying, that's one of those things. It won't bring, what do you say? It won't bring back your fucking honey or something like that. It's not like that. It's lines like that. And that's what makes this movie more legendary than I think it actually is. Would you guys consider this a guilty pleasure? Would you ever watch this really again just to see those scenes? Or would you just watch those scenes, do you think? That's something I really wanted to ask you guys.
Just watch the scenes.
Yeah. Adam, would you sit through it again?
Probably not. I'd probably just do. I mean, I can see why somebody would sit through it though, because it is just such a crazy batshit movie though.
Right. And it's like one of those things compared to like Vampire's Kiss. I don't know which one I would sit through first. Would you sit through this or Vampire's Kiss? Because they're both like in that same territory of bad.
Who knows? Maybe they'll come up against each other at some point. We'll save that conversation for down the road.
Julie's all excited for that one. How about you, though, John? What do you think? Would you sit through this movie again if you were to recommend? Would you recommend it to someone just to watch one time?
Maybe one time, but I don't think I'd sit through it again. Be more likely to go watch the clips than to watch the whole thing again.
Yeah, I think so. But I think we're at that point that we're ready to just wrap this up and give our final scores. I'm going to give The Wicker Man a 1 out of 10.
This hers? Tell me!
Yes, I think it's, yeah.
How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned?
I don't know!
I really wish I could give this a really good score, but this movie's just hot garbage from beginning to end. It's really just an insult to everything horror, thriller, drama, Nicolas Cage's acting catalog. Is it so bad it's good? That's going to leave it up to the individual person. I personally don't think I could ever sit through The Wicker Man ever again in my entire life. I would just recommend looking at the clips because the clips are more iconic than the movie at this point. And it's not even one of those movies where there's like an interesting backstory as to why it's so terrible. It's just a terrible movie, and it's really hard to recommend and sit through when there's so many better options out there. But that's where I'm going to stand with The Wicker Man. John, how about you? Where do you stand with this one?
Man, I just love when you give out your scores. It's always a big collection of who knows what Kevin's going to pick. I'm giving this movie a 4. I could see how some people would enjoy this movie, but obviously half the movies we watch don't make any sense to their plot lines. This movie definitely has a lack of that, but I think Nicolas Cage's cagey performance gives it over.
Wow, you give it a little more than me. I'm actually surprised at that. I'm very surprised at that. I thought maybe I'm the only one on this island here. So all right, so you enjoyed it a little bit more than me. All right, fair enough. Adam, how about you? Where do you stand?
I am going to give The Wicker Man a 3 out of 10. I was actually going to say that it depends on the individual person.
Yeah.
I was going to completely agree with you. Like at this point, like I'm not saying that I didn't, enjoy my time,
Right.
but I don't think that I would, consider this a good movie by any standards.
Yeah, it's in a weird spot for me, this movie. Again, I could have given it maybe a 2 or a 3 if I felt like I could just turn this on and like show it to anybody and we'll just have a good time and watch it. But I just felt like it was just so boring for me.
Yeah, I think that's the only way that I would watch it again is if I was watching with somebody that hasn't seen it before. I'm like, you gotta see this.
Yeah, you just gotta see it. And it's in a weird way, we are still talking about The Wicker Man because it's so
true.
bad. So there's always that conversation. But just on a fundamental film level, this movie really irks me to no end. So unfortunately, I'm still I guess 1 point for just being a movie, I guess, and like someone filming it. So you get a point for that. So congratulations. Julie, how about you? Where do you stand?
I'm going to give The Wicker Man, I might go with John. I might give it a 4 out of 10.
You tell us what man represents in his purest form. Yes.
Phallic symbol, phallic symbol.
School's really changed since I was a kid.
How dare you stand there and frighten my children?
The laugh out loud moments, I think, were enough to, I was torn between a 3.5 or a 4. With the bees in my eyes and the bear suit, just punching random people, that kind of bumped it up a little bit for me. But its biggest crime, like you and Adam said, is that it's boring for the most part. You have those couple little gems. So many plot ideas and threads are just dropped out of nowhere, just things just thrown in there for shock and never explained. I think it's worth the one watch to experience it, and then you can just forget about it and move on with your life.
Yeah, it's interesting because, for all the mysteries that The Wicker Man tries to throw at you, the biggest mystery is, how does this movie exist? That's kind of like the biggest mystery I have. I really can't fathom how they let this come to screen in the first place. The interesting fact, though, I did read about this movie is when Nicolas Cage saw the original Wicker Man, it left him disturbed for 2 weeks and he couldn't sleep. I guess after watching this Wicker Man, it would probably leave me disturbed for like 2 years because this movie's god awful. I'm sorry. I did not have a good time. If you like the Wicker Man, good for you. It's enjoyable for what it is, what some of its scenes, but it's just one of those movies that probably shouldn't exist, and it gives remakes a bad name in a lot of ways. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That's John, Adam, Julie. We are the Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll see you in the next one. If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time. That probably shouldn't have